Hi, I'm Jane from Jane Rowland Photography. Today I want to talk about stepping outside your comfort zone. Even if you have created the most comfortable little bubble to live in, that can become quite claustrophobic. If you do the same things over and over again, it can start to feel like Groundhog Day. And you think, well, is this all there is to it? I go to work, I watch TV, I go to bed, and then I repeat over and over again. If you are feeling a little bit flat and unfulfilled, then that is a sign that maybe you need to think about stepping outside your comfort zone. So a number of years ago, I decided that I would join a photography club. I didn't really know any friends, I didn't have any friends who were photographers, so I thought it would be a great way of meeting other photographers and get the benefit of their experience. So I found a local camera club close to where I lived. I'd already made the decision when I signed up to join this camera club that I was not going to enter any of my images into the competitions because I didn't think I had any images that were good enough for a start, but also I didn't want to expose myself to the very uncomfortable experience of being publicly judged on the quality of my images, especially images that I like and are attached to. Having said that, I was quite happy to go to the judging nights and listen to other people's images being criticised because I could learn from their mistakes. So on the first night of the club, the chairperson gave an introduction and then he went on to talk about the competitions. And he said, look, we're all here to get better at our photography, and the number one way you can improve your photographs is to enter competitions. But then he said something that completely changed my mind. He said, don't think of it as a competition. Think of it as a really unique opportunity to get feedback on your photographs from either a professional or an award-winning photographer. And to my own surprise, I came away on that first night thinking, right, okay, I am going to enter the competition after all, even though I knew it would be a very uncomfortable experience. Every competition has a theme. This particular competition, the first competition, had a theme of pictorial. That was the theme. The theme was pictorial images. Pictorial meant a photograph that told a story. So I decided that I would enter this image and I called it The Last Resort. And the reason I chose this image is because it told a story. And the story was that the previous year I had this idea of doing some Christmas cards of our cats, one of our cats wearing a little cat-sized Christmas hat. So I got a couple of cat Santa hats from the local pet shop, and we set up a little studio in the living room and my husband was holding the cats. And we tried to take some photographs of the cats wearing the hats, and I just ended up with images, a number of images of very annoyed looking cats with Santa hats on their heads that hanging off at various angles. So I decided that I would use that image with a Santa hat on it, and I would call it The Last Resort, because photoshopping a cartoon hat onto the cat was a last resort because we couldn't actually get them to sit still and pose with a real hat. And my husband said to me, don't enter that image. They won't get it. They won't understand why you've stuck a cartoon hat on the cat. And I could see where he was coming from, because when you submit an image, you're only allowed to submit the photograph and the title. You can't submit any other explanatory detail. The judge has to come to his own conclusion about what the images are about. So I said, well, the hat is the story. If the hat isn't on the cat, that doesn't fulfill the brief. So I ignored my husband's advice and I submitted the image anyway. So fast forward a few weeks to judging night, and this is where you're really outside your comfort zone, because it is really nerve-wracking if you've ever entered any kind of competition, but a photo competition. So we're all sat in a church hall and it's full, it's packed with people, and you've got this big projector screen at the front, and at any moment your image is going to come up on the screen, but there's no order to it. You don't know when that's going to happen. After what seemed like hours, my image came onto the big screen at the front. There it was, in all its glory, the last resort. And it was greeted with a deafening silence. And I can't remember what the judge said overall, but I do remember his first words. And his first words were, "Why, oh why, oh why." And I think after that I stopped listening because I was just so embarrassed. I was sinking down into my chair. My husband was laughing because he found it hilarious because he told me not to enter it and I hadn't listened to his advice, and this was, it's entirely predictable. So it was critiqued fairly harshly, and I was pretty mortified by that experience. It was certainly an uncomfortable experience. The flip side of that was that I had also entered a second photograph into the competition, and this photograph was called Orador Saglan, and I had hoped that the judge would have taken the time to research the name of this particular village in France because it had quite a tragic history, and had he looked it up on the internet then he would have understood what the photograph was about. And fortunately for me, he did look it up and it ended up winning first place. So it was a real evening of two halves. And so the point of this story is that I had opened myself up to an experience which was without doubt very uncomfortable, but I had really benefited from it as a result. And when I came home that evening, I didn't come home thinking, right, that's it, I'm never ever going to do that again, that was just so embarrassing. I came home and I was like, right, when's the next competition and what is the theme? And I was really, really enthusiastic about entering the competitions. And for the next 2 years, I entered, I think, every competition that was going. And I received a lot of negative feedback in that time. Some of the images didn't do very well at all. Some of them did very well. I got a couple of more winners as well. But there are two main points about this whole experience that I would take away with me. One is that after that first night, the criticism that I received was never quite as terrifying, and I kind of got used to my images being publicly critiqued. It wasn't as daunting ever as it was on that first night. So my comfort zone had effectively expanded. And the second point I would make is it gave me so much more confidence in my abilities as a photographer. And one of the really unexpected results of entering this competition is 4 or 5 years later, I decided that I would start my own photography business. I would start a portrait business, and I am 100% convinced that it was the decision to enter that first competition which led directly to me ultimately having the confidence to start my own business. So one of the reasons to expose yourself to new experiences and to step outside your comfort zone is because you don't actually know where that might lead. And so I'm going to finish off this video with just giving you 4 more reasons why I think that you should step outside your comfort zone and the benefits that it can bring to your life. The first thing I would say is that don't be ruled by fear. I think fear of being criticised, or fear of other people's opinion, or even appearing foolish can stop us doing a lot of things, or can stop us trying a lot of new things. And I think that's a real shame, because it's almost like a self-imposed prison where other people's opinions stop you doing what you really want to do. When I started my photography business, I wanted to name it after myself. I wanted to call it Jane Rowland Photography, but I was really embarrassed about starting the business. I thought people would be thinking, look at her, who does she think she is, starting her own photography business? She's a teacher, she's an English teacher, she's not a photographer. And actually no one's ever said that to me. It was completely in my head. The point is, I allowed that imaginary criticism to dictate what I call the business. And I didn't call it Jane Rowland Photography at the start, I called it something completely different. And after a few years, it niggled that I'd allowed this imaginary criticism to dictate what I call the business, and no longer felt like an imposter pretending to be a professional photographer. At that point, I thought, you know what, I'm going to change the name of the business. I'm not embarrassed, I don't care what people think anymore. I've grown in confidence enough to name the business after me. I named the business Jane Rowland Photography, and I didn't let my fear of other people's judgment dictate what I did. The second thing I would say is, don't be a perfectionist. If you're stepping outside your comfort zone, I think you need to accept that when you try something new, you're going to be pretty rubbish at it to start with. Now, I am under no illusions that my setup here is, you know, it's all very amateurish. This is my office that I do my work in, my school work, and if ever I shoot a video, I just clear all the cluster out the back, I stick my little on-air sign, you know, it's all very a bit pathetic, and I know that I'm still really unnatural speaking to the camera, and I know I'm not very good at it. Same with my editing. My editing, I am barely functioning as a video editor because it's all completely new to me. But the thing is, if I waited until I was brilliant at any of these aspects, until I had the perfect studio and I was you know, a really slick professional editor and presenter, I would never ever have started this channel. And the best advice on starting a YouTube channel that I saw on YouTube was just get started and just accept that the first 20-30 videos that you produce are going to be really rubbish, because I knew I wasn't really good enough to start a YouTube channel, which is the same how I felt when I started a business. You know, you don't feel good enough, but you just start anyway, because if you are waiting to be perfect, then you'll never achieve anything, because that only comes in time. The third point I would make is not to underestimate yourself. I'm a firm believer in the fact that I think we all have hidden talents and untapped resources, and I think trying new things helps you learn things about yourself that you didn't even know. Certainly just giving something a go can become something that's incredibly rewarding. You could just stumble upon something that you're really good at that you might never have discovered. The fourth reason I would give for stepping outside your comfort zone is simply fulfillment. We're all on this planet for not a very long time, and I think it's a case of making the most of the time that we've got here. There is, you know, there's still more that we can do to live a rich and fulfilling life. My best friend, for example, has taken up Morris dancing. Quite unexpectedly. I've known her for decades and she's never ever expressed an interest in Morris dancing before. And I said to her, why? Why have you suddenly taken up Morris dancing at this stage in life? And she said, well, it had something to do with turning 50 for a start, and it does make you evaluate your life. And she said, all I've done for the last 16 years is I've gone to work, I've come home, I've gone to work, I've come home. I've not really engaged in my local community. She lives in a little village down south. And she said, I really just felt I wanted to get out and about and meet new people. I don't know why Morris dancing sprang to mind. I like the folksiness of it. And yes, it is terrifying, but it's also incredibly rewarding. I've met people. They are mainly older than I am, she said, but you know, they've all got really interesting stories to tell, and it's just something, a new part of my life that I'm really enjoying that, you know, she wasn't even doing 2 years ago. So just trying out, however, you know, random, a hobby that you might just suddenly pop into your mind, just try it out, just do it, and don't give yourself the time to talk yourself out of things. The last benefit I would say about stepping outside your comfort zone is that it helps you deal with change. You might have tried very hard all your life to keep your life predictable and safe and stay in your comfort zone, you know, as much as you possibly can. I know people who are terrified by change and they are very, very resistant to trying anything new. But unfortunately, life is unpredictable and it throws things at us which you have to have the resources to deal with. And I think if you've got into a habit of putting yourself into situations that are a little bit unpredictable, are a little bit new, then when change does inevitably happen, you have got more resources, you've got more resilience to deal with those kind of things that you haven't chosen to happen but happen nonetheless. So that's what I wanted to say really about stepping outside your comfort zone. I think there's lots of reasons to do it, and I'd be really interested if you let me know if you've stepped outside your comfort zone and what were the consequences of that, good or bad. Or if you're thinking of doing it, please comment below, and do subscribe if you want to see any more videos about photography and life in general.